Well, again, it's September 5th, and this is the first Monday night meeting of the Timex Sinclair online user group, and we have a pretty full house tonight. I see that I or somebody else managed to get through to Andy Hradesky. I'm hoping I can pronounce that. Oh, it says he doesn't have a mic or a camera. That's too bad, because I was hoping that Andy would tell us the story about selling QLs door to door. But maybe he'll tell us that next time.
Well, without a mic or a camera, I can make up a story that'll sound really good. I can.
And Tim's told us a little bit about
he
the
has
story.
Nothing to say.
So we could just, tell the story, on Andy's behalf. He says he's attempting to log in. Okay, cool, Andy. That'll be great if you can log in. And we've got another newbie with us, as it were, at least a new person to us, not new to Timex's, with Joe. Carl, I want to ask you about a thing that you talked about earlier on email with the ZX81 HDMI Raspberry Pi connection. But let's get started. Oh, and Jamie just joined us. So Ryan was just a minute ago talking before we started about learning machine language, and so maybe Jamie can volunteer to teach us, or maybe I just volunteered Jamie to teach us machine language. Anyway, it's Monday night. We have no agenda.
Well, hopefully, I don't know if you got the message, but Evie said she might join us.
Yeah, right, Evie.
Maybe.
What's the thing called?
The BackBit cartridge.
BackBit cartridge, right?
Yeah. So basically, she was on a month ago or so, and she's making this cartridge that is a micro SD card that supports about, I think, 15 or 16 systems now. And she said she was going to add support for the 2068, and she emailed me yesterday and said she's got it working. I don't know how stable it is or how well it's working, but if she joins us, that would be cool. She can give us an update on that. And I have been using her BackBit cartridge over the last week with my Atari 130XE and my Bally Astrocade.
That's really cool.
It works pretty good. I mean, really good. I mean, pretty good is not right. It works fantastic.
Awesome.
So I would love to see it working on the 2068.
Awesome. So, Joe, I'm going to pick on you again just for a second. And you were telling us about your 64K ZX81 that you tried to mount in a Hazeltine terminal.
Yeah.
Did it look like the Kraftwerk Hazeltine? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so one of the Kraftwerk albums, I think it was Computer World, had a Hazeltine 1500 on the cover of the album.
Yes, it was a 1500.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the black one with the little door in the front, the little, I don't know, it's a little tab you pulled off and you could access dip switches underneath it.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. And
you kind of toasted it.
Yep. Always discharge your power supply when you're working with old linear power supplies and big giant caps. Always discharge them before service, right? Because exactly. I dropped the main line coming off that cap right onto the 64K RAM card and destroyed it. This was I want to say bite back, but that wasn't it. It was what were the long skinny black?
Memotech.
Memotech, thank you. Yeah, Memotech. It was a Memotech one, and I actually called Memotech and said, "Hey, is there any hope?" And they said no. It would cost more to fix it. But I stubbornly hung on to it, and about a year ago, I actually repaired it. And
I'm gonna bring up Ryan's holding up there's the album that I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's not a 1500, is it?
No, that's not a 1500.
Yeah, I didn't think. Okay, it had been a while.
Yeah, the 1500 was the black one. It was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had the video worked out and everything, and yeah, toasted it and.
So Joe, where did you get the system from that you were using? Was it donated to you, or
the Hazeltine?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So back in the day, right? I would always go to. I still go to auctions occasionally. But there was a school that was getting rid of a whole bunch of stuff, and there was a Hazeltine terminal there, and it was in pretty rough shape. Some of the keys were missing, and it looked like somebody dropped something on the keyboard. I actually found the rest of the keys on the inside of the machine. Somebody was kind enough to throw them inside. So yeah, it was the old stack pole key switches. And I had there were several broken key stems, and I had to go buy a TI 994A surplus keyboard to pull the stack poles out. The little center
same switch mechanism.
Yeah,
Okay.
same switch mechanism. Yeah,
Wow.
so I was able to do that to fix the keyboard, and actually pulled out some of the little fingers that went together, you know, to repair the ones that were damaged, and of course the springs that were lost, etc., etc. But yeah, I had the keyboard wired up. I had the extra keys working. The numeric keypad was working. I used the circuits that were provided in Syntax magazine, and it had a little circuit for using extra keys on a ZX80, and of course it worked exactly the same on a ZX81. Yeah. So
Joe,
But to be honest too, you know, there's I think at least 3 or 4 different kind of TI 44A keyboards, right? So don't just totally equate that, right, to the that particular one, right? Because they're
you have to get the stack pole. You can't use the membrane ones; those
Right.
don't work at all, right?
Yeah. Well, the membrane one was the later, like the cream colored.
Exactly. Yeah. If it has the black keys, then you have a 50-50 chance that it's a mechanical keyboard that'll work with very minor wiring changes. In fact, I should go dig it out real quick. I had rescued a TI 99. I thought I was going to rescue it. It was stored in a basement, but it was literally a block of rust on the inside. So actually, let me go grab it.
You go do that, because
I'll be right back.
I'm going to ask Tim to give Andy a little intro. So Tim, tell us what you know about Andy.
Well, it's been a while. I met Andy, God, I want to say it was like 80, 87, 88. Now it would have been like 87. I was attending the Peninsula User Group. I'm not exactly how sure we met, but I do remember meeting him. I went to his house. I think you were living in Sunnyvale at the time, Andy. You had a 2068. You were selling QLs. I remember you just said that you had a 2068 with ribbon cable behind it to go like to the printer or something, and your rabbit decided to chomp on that.
That's pretty funny.
And here it is almost 40 years, 35 something years later. I don't know if you've got rabbits, but now I do. I've got rabbits, but I keep them away from the computer.
That's
Andy, there?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, the power of BlackBerry. Not so much for Apple Macintosh, though.
Andy, weren't you at Onizuka at that time, or Sunnyvale?
Yeah. Yes, I was. I was in the Air Force. So were you, if I remember correctly. And by the way, Tim, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, I actually, at that time, I was still just graduated college, going through Air Force ROTC. I didn't go active until March of 88. So, and then I did 8.5 years and came back to the Bay Area.
Wow.
Well, congratulations on your successes. And then, you know, for the past, I guess 40 years, I separated from the military, from the Air Force in 94. And if you recall, I had quite the Timex Sinclair collection, as well as the QL collection. And I was served at dinner a notification from my wife then, that she said that if I don't sell it all, that she would divorce me. So in my eyes of wisdom, I before leaving California, before leaving, after California, I moved to Colorado for at the Onizuka Air Force Base sister station in Colorado Springs. And so she served me those words at dinner, and so I promptly sold my my beloved 2068 with the Zebra drive system and the DD3 thousand, the Timex computer from Portugal.
Andy, I have to ask to take this back a bit. Did she serve you that letter on something maybe on a printer from the 2040? Maybe she typed it out on there and it's like, this is the last thing you'll ever see on the Timex before. Like you're like, oh, I get it now. I get it.
No, she didn't go that elaborate. She was vocal about it. She says, I have something very important to tell you. And I said, sure, what's up? And she let me have it with both barrels. And so I went ahead and I had the full 1500 with the dock and all the cartridges and all the software. I had the 1000, I'm sorry, I had the ZX81, had a memo pack 64 on it. And it was quite the collection. I even had a ZX81 I stuck inside of a full stroke keyboard. And I had another ZX81 I put inside of a 2068 case and hardwired it to the keyboard. And it worked quite well. I was pretty impressed. And then I had the QL. I even had CPM 2.2 running on the 2068, and it was quite the setup. It was I was very proud of it. And so she told me how to get rid of it all. So in Colorado, I sold it to a user out of the Denver group, the entire Timex Sinclair collection, but I held back the QL. And my argument was, I need a computer, so this is the computer I'm going to use. So then we moved to Florida about 4 months later. And
this is in '94 when you finished up your military?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I moved back because I'm a Floridian. And so I moved back to Florida. And on the way back, she told me that I need to get rid of the QL and I can go get a PC laptop or something if I chose, but it just consumed too much room. And it was too much of my time. And she was very animate about that. And I should have known I should have learned my lesson the first time, because I got divorced 2 years later anyway. So,
well, honestly, it wasn't the QL smaller than a PC laptop at the time. I mean, really, realistically? Yeah. It was, right?
Yeah, that was my argument.
So there's no, you can't save room by buying a PC laptop back then. It was just, but okay.
I don't think that was her motivation. But anyway,
there's no judgment calls here. Like, I'm just making observations.
I agree. She had different motives, and you know what? I wish her well. And so I haven't touched. Well, let me rephrase it this way: I haven't been to a Timex Sinclair meeting since California.
Wow.
And so it was a very treat to find you guys on the internet. It was, I keep looking over to my right, which would be to your left, because I have you both on a cell phone and on my larger monitor. So, yeah, so I'm very excited. I think the last actual Timex Sinclair meeting that I attended was the San Francisco group. They actually had me for, I think, 4 years. I was their last editor for Timelines.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Is you have a pretty rich history.
Yeah, I do. And
well, why don't we review what that history is? Because I honestly, not that I've never heard of you. I heard your introduction there, so I've heard of you now. But and I never attended Timex meetings or anything. So why don't you give us some backstory about who the hell you are? I mean, like, I heard Tim's introduction, but
Tim knows
you tell us.
I know you because I've indexed articles and things that you've written and scanned copies of newsletters that you were the editor for. And then Tim told us, the story about your plan to sell QLs door to door, but that's about as much as anybody here knows yet. So take us back in time.
Tim is correct. I did sell QLs door to door. I sold them through the Air Force. I sold them door to door in the communities I lived in. And it was quite hard to support the QL, because every time that I would establish a catalog utilizing the vendors that I was relying on, no sooner did I create the catalog, they would up their price. And so I'd have to then rehaggle on all that. But yeah, I did do that. I'll be honest with you, the 2068 is a computer I absolutely love. I'm very Even to this day, I'm sorry that it didn't get its due. Thanks to Commodore. Also, thanks to IBM. The QL had so much going for it with the expansion box, that the 29 expansion box that was never developed on the market, was able to let the computer handle up to 16 megabytes of memory. The bank swapping scheme is it divided each 64K into 8 chunks, and I believe it was chunk number 8 that, or maybe it was chunk 3, that was where the computer would not lose its mind and know what got swapped where. So it essentially had the ability of cycling 256 64K chunks minus 8K, so it'd be 56 in its bank swapping scheme. And
I think there was two. I think there was 2 other banks, right? The home bank and the cartridge bank kind of was in that 256, right? But it had that potential. You're certainly right. It had that potential.
Yeah, it actually had a line going out the back side of it to support that, and it was phenomenal. When Dan Ross went over to Sinclair and discovered the QL and what Sinclair Research was planning for it. Of course, he came back and put the big hold on the Timex Sinclair 2000, and thus was born the 1500, because they already had all the molds and everything all done. The 2068 would have been a remarkable machine if it had been given the chance, if the price wars hadn't occurred. And we have, like I said, Commodore to thank for that, particularly one person who, also did the same, I think, to Atari, because he bought them out too.
You're talking about Jack Tramiel?
Yep.
Jack Tramiel?
You mean Dumbledore?
That was a bad. It was a.
Don't we ultimately have TI to thank for all of it, though? Because didn't that?
Well, they helped in World War II. Yeah, they were doing the price campaign against Commodore. I guess they both had a hate relationship with each other, and they took it personally.
And I think it's kind of related because the video game console, the console wars, that kind of happened right in '82, right, where that went to hell. Yep, and the home computers were kind of, they weren't really hand in hand with that, but it was just another consideration of, they play games, right? And it was kind of an extension of the video game market crash that I think kind of hurt the home computers at that time.
Yeah,
right. Because everyone kind of really, that was my view, was like everyone seemed to be playing games. Who's actually programming on these things?
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the reason the 2068 has a cartridge port? Really, it's because of like the systems, the other game systems that did have cartridge ports, and so they upgraded the Spectrum to have a car. And obviously they did more upgrades, but like they thought it needed to have that cartridge port, which then it was never utilized really.
Cassette loading time too,
and cassette loading time, but you could have had this drive. Yeah.
For Sinclair, the Timex port came in too late to the market. The market had already been saturated. The PCs were starting to flood in.
Yeah,
and the clones. Clive was a little behind on that. So, but I have good news for you all. So let me grab this. This was very hard to find, and I found one. Actually, I found 2, and I bought them both. One's an North American model. The other one is a European model. And then I also hunted down and got a hold of, and it's sad because I had all this stuff before. I had 3 QLs networked together running in my office in Colorado. And then I had it in my office in Florida when I was there. I'm now in Arkansas. And so I had all that. And so I found this.
Wow.
So this is, as you can see, an American, the lighting's bad.
American QL.
You're an American QL. I've already got the latest membrane. I got 2 membranes in. They were manufactured in 2020. Came with the Montecomco QLC card on it. I've got a disk interface that's coming in with it that just came in. So to upgrade it, I've also got a couple of Minerva EPROMs to go in there. I have a board that'll slide inside of it that'll jump it up to 512K, or actually to 640, I should say it that way. And then on the European model, it comes with a Trump card, and it came with a dual flop 3.5-inch Sinclair floppies. I found that, so I went ahead and snagged it. And then, of course, I went out and bought an old 386 SX gateway for an iSupport. So I have a QXL card that can slide in there. And so now I'm back to my 3 QLs to network again. And so I'm very excited about getting all this up and running. And so it'll be a nice project for the next month or so.
Awesome. Now that the pointer environment is freely available, you can install that also. And
yes, I can.
If you've got enough memory, you can actually get a gold card version of SMS QE and get that.
Yes, you can.
I did that on my old QL, so you can get up to speed, or you can just get an emulator for free.
Now I started off with that on the Mac. I got Daniel's emulator, and
okay.
Yeah, exactly, and it runs great. I swap between the JSU and the Minerva ROMs on it, but I can't seem to download anything because it'll run super basic programs just fine. But as soon as I try to run an executable, something simple like Quill or Archive, it bombs. And so I think there's something wrong with the zip file that I'm unzipping, and I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit further.
I can always send you a QXL file, which is basically a form of hard drive, virtual, that you can try out on. So I've got Q emulator. I've run under Wine, but they gave me a binary that just did not work. And unfortunately, I didn't keep my old version of the binary. So now I'm hosed on Q emulator, but I'm running mostly SMS Q emulator and SQL UX. In fact, I know the guy that's doing SQL UX right now. So
sweet. So yeah, we'll have to collaborate, and because I'm very eager to get the Q up and running. And I've noticed on eBay some of the stuff that's come out for the 2068 utilizing the cartridge slot. And so I was like, ooh, OS64 again with the Spectrum ROM on board. That's exciting.
There's a guy, well, that may be me, but there's a guy in Brazil, I think, Ariel Ranieri, who makes these cartridges that have like up to 5 games on them. And he's got this down to a science. He's written a program that he uses to sort of assemble the ROMs and stuff. But the shipping from wherever he is as much as the cartridge. It's like, he's charging like $39 for the cartridge, but it's $39 shipping too, which is.
I have seen those, David. Has anyone here purchased them before?
I don't know, but I keep
Anyone?
inviting him to come on, and he keeps saying no.
Okay, maybe a lot of people I've noticed feel like their English isn't good enough, and then they speak better than me. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, come on and talk with us.
Yeah, we just want to hear your story, man.
Yeah.
We just want to hear neat stuff.
And it should be simple enough, if somebody can get his board. I mean, I'm sure he has the dip switches on there that reroute the address line so that it picks the right 8K chunk.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, for the different games that he puts onto I don't know, it's probably a 256K EEPROM chip, right? So it can hold 5-6 images, right? 16K images. And he just used the dip switch. I think he used the dip switch. I thought I saw a video. Maybe you can pick it from a menu. It starts a menu up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can pick it from a menu. So I don't know, obviously how he's doing that. There must be some code behind that.
I think, Carl, you're volunteering to pony up some cash to get one of those.
Boy.
If you send it out here, the Albuquerque Timex user group can all use it. So the 3 of us can share it together. What do you think, Carl?
Now.
Come on, let's do it.
Well, I think we can take a regular cartridge and just kind of do some jumper settings. We could get it to work too.
Adam, did you say there's a users group out in New Mexico?
Oh, well, not exactly, but Ryan and myself and Carl, it turns out we all live in the same city, and we only found this out in this meeting. And
Right.
Ryan literally lives like within blocks of me, and Carl lives in a neighboring town, and it takes me, it takes like 20 minutes to get to his house. So how this happened, I don't know. But we joke about it each meeting that there's a user group, which technically there isn't, but we've all met each other. Although I don't think Ryan has met Carl, but yeah,
It's
I've
the
met them.
Albuquerque
They've come over
Special
here
Interest.
and we've nerded out together, so
Yeah.
we've
Well,
had a good time.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's cool.
And so, Carl, I have a question for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that photograph you have behind you that's showing your 2068 and your 2040 printer, is that a molded case of silver, or did you paint that?
I wish I could find original. I think probably weren't the original ones probably painted as well.
No.
Probably.
No, that's
I don't.
No,
I don't
the
think.
originals
I
were all
don't think they
black.
made. Well, I know, but I don't think an original silver one would have been molded silver. I think they only made them painted, and then because I don't think they ever really made any official ones. I think they
The
were
only
just
silver one that I ever saw was on the backs of the 2068 box.
exactly.
And
exactly.
I thought it was a black one with the trickery of lighting in the photography.
No, I think they painted it or did whatever they needed to do, right? The marketing folks, and that's kind of what I did. I have 2 or 3 of them that I painted silver.
Okay,
So
and you found the right shade. You told us what the right shade of silver was. I wrote it down.
Right. Yeah, it's some shortcuts, Krylon shortcuts that you can get from like Michael's, or some of these other hobby craft stores.
Yep.
It's like a little 5-ounce can.
Yeah.
And there's a silver color that they make, and don't forget the bottom's kind of, it's a 2-tone type of deal, right? If you ever look at this Timex stuff, it's not all silver, right? The bottom half of these things are usually like a grayer color, right? Yep. So I didn't do that initially, and I'm like, oh crap. And I looked at them, I put them together. It's like, oh, the bottom, you don't see much of the bottom on the 2040, but you can, right? Yeah. And it just didn't match. So I had to go back and paint that gray.
It's a little bit of an olivey color. Like there's a military, that sort of palette of colors you would have painted your, tank models.
You calling it Battleship Gray?
No, not quite, because it's got some green to it.
Yeah, and if you look at the
tank,
2068, yeah, if you look at the 2068's top, it looks to me that that's actually painted as well, right? And I think people that have used it a lot, they might have actually worn off the, the slope in the front there that you can see on David's keyboard there, that little angle cut there where you lay your palms on. I think they kind of, well, I know it gets shiny after a time because I know mine have gotten shiny. I haven't worn the paint off, but I think it's just painted.
You just have oily hands. That's all it is.
Well, you know what I did with my 2068, which worked out extremely well for me, is I got clear fingernail polish, and I just put a very thin coating on top of the keyboard on the 2068.
Yep.
And
and that's kind of what I tried to do with these, things I paint silver. You got to protect it with some kind of clear coat.
Yeah.
You don't want to just leave it, because the one I have behind me, or it's in that picture, I never did that. And if you rub your fingers on it, of course, you'll get, the silver paint will come off on your fingers.
So,
hey, Andy, I do want to say, I want to give you some time to speak a little bit more, but I do want to make sure that Evie gets a chance to come up and talk about her project. And
sure.
I don't know how much time she has. So if that's okay,
can we move right on over to her?
Okay, cool. All right, Evie, are you ready to say hello and talk about your project?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah. So BackBit is my cartridge that has been basically in development for a few years now. And this machine is my 18th system. So you can see it here. Let me know if the picture is okay.
It looks fine. I mean, it's good enough.
So this is what happens. So it needs to power down fully. I think maybe it retains some information in RAM or something.
I have that issue too when I'm using some of my systems. I was told that it's actually my power supply isn't got enough oomph. I don't know if that's right, but
if you turn it off for a while and then, okay, so there's BackBit. Okay, so currently it just loads doc files. And so if I use the arrows, so for example, crazy bugs, this is crazy bugs. And then if I press this button, all right, and then I can go back and select, let's say like Qbert. Game. I think, yeah, there it goes. So yeah, so it'll load any doc file. And basically it's almost identical to how the Spectrum works, except there's two main differences. One is that
I wanted to say Evie does already support the Spectrum, right? Is that correct with your?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that people understand that what she's referring to.
That beeping is really annoying. So the first thing that's critical to support this machine is the ROSCS pin. So on the Spectrum expansion, you just go right on the bus and fill in memory wherever it should go. Whereas this machine, it's actually it's a bit of a smarter bus sharing because you have the ROM select, and so it could select an address in the ROM, or it could select the same address internally. And by obeying the ROM select,
Evie, can I ask you a question? Because there's a lot of people here who weren't here when we spoke last time. I know what this system is and what you're talking about here, but the BackBit cartridge is basically now in this case it's not really a cartridge. It's going into the expansion port, or it's going into the cartridge port.
It's going to the expansion port because it wouldn't really fit in the cartridge port. The fit is really small here, so yeah, there's no way the whole BackBit cartridge could fit in there. But if you want to know what the BackBit cartridge is, basically it's a microprocessor inside a cartridge that essentially is a ROM emulator for the most part. But it also has software built in so that any system you put it on will automatically boot up to a menu unique to that system.
And you just need a sort of hardware converter for the different buses. Right.
So I've got a 40-pin connector, and each cartridge uses a different 40-pin adapter, and that's a pinout specific to BackBit that identifies what machine it's on and also transmits, all the needed signals.
Right, back to the host, yeah.
Cool. Just as an example, I mean, she probably has them handy too, but like this one is the one from my Atari 8-bit that she sent me about 2 weeks ago. And this one's for which? Oh, this is actually for the BackBit. This one's for my Bally. And somewhere over there, I have one for my Odyssey, which I don't have handy, but it works really well. I mean, I couldn't believe how. And also, at least on the Astrocade, there's actually an extra program you can boot in holding down. There's a button on there to reset the cartridge. And on the Astrocade, when it boots up, I get into a mode where I can do some inspections of the Astrocade and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool to see on there.
Yeah, and I actually have
diagnostic program.
Right, and I actually have the ZX81 interface and the Spectrum interface for my BackBit. So I haven't got to it yet, but I'm probably planning to do that here, hopefully this month. So I give it a shot. And I'm glad to see that you got the the 2068 going. I mean, I'm sure you'll get you've got an adapter prefab.
Yeah, so I've gone through a couple revisions already because first I just took the ZX81 and I added a few wires to it. And it was a little bit haphazard, just because it's a little bit bodgy,
or as Dave Jones would say, it's a little how you doing.
Yeah, it was a little how you doing, so Australian would say. And then so then I made an adapter with a joystick port because I figured for Spectrum compatibility, why not have a Kempston port? And I think I miswired like one pin, but once I got the doc files running, I said, wait a minute, I don't think you even need a joystick port, because the only reason I put the Kempston port on there is so that if you have a Spectrum 48K, which doesn't have any joystick port, then you'll have a joystick port.
Evie?
And yeah,
I'd recommend that you leave that joystick port on there because.
Oh, really?
The reason I'm recommending that is that if you take this one step farther, and this is one thing I wanted to ask you about, you could actually substitute the Spectrum ROM for the 2068 ROM, and then you get a Spectrum emulator on the 2068 for free, and you need that Kempston port in order to run Spectrum games on the 2068.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I just have to flip around some pinouts, but I don't know. I've been trying to make the adapters like simpler rather than more complicated, because I don't know,
what's the fun in that?
It adds a lot.
Yeah, really.
Well, I don't know. I like having kind of just a pass-through adapter.
This is also what allows her to create, what did you say, 18? Is this your 18th one?
Yeah.
18. Rather than still working on the first one, this is why it's
well, yeah, I have the Spectrum. Go ahead, Evie, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I started out on the Commodore, obviously, and you get people who are fans of one particular system, of course, and I find for me, I just get like I don't want to spend a ton of time on the software, because then I'm not going to have any time to work on new hardware. The hardware is just kind of more fun because it's less all inside your head and it's more something you can actually work on. So yeah, I try not to get too bogged down with one system, but yeah, I can put the joystick port back on there if you think it's worthwhile. It's just it's just when something doesn't work, my first instinct is just to gut it completely.
Mm-hmm.
You mean put the joystick port onto the TS2068 adapter?
Yeah, I mean, it could go on there. I think the only reason it didn't work on the one I have is because for some reason, the IO A5 pin, in my schematic, I put it on the wrong side. So it was like turning on the joystick port when it shouldn't, and it was putting bus contention on there, and then nothing was working. So that's why I kind of just gutted it at first. But it's actually possible to do, to mix up, file formats. So, for example, I know there's the bank enable pin, which kind of just disables everything that's internal to the system. Yep. So I think with that, you can substitute a new ROM.
That's right. Yep.
A new BIOS.
Yep. That's what my FPGA is doing right now.
Yeah, it's a little complicated on the 2068, but for the purposes of getting a Spectrum ROM emulator, running from your system, the bank enable pin is your key thing. So anytime an address is selected in the 0 to 16K range, you can use that bank enable pin to substitute your own ROM. And then,
but can't you just leave it on all the time?
No, because it disables all the memory on the internal.
Oh, doesn't it disable like the graphics memory?
It'll disable all the RAM and stuff, right? I mean, unless you want to substitute, the entire 64K range.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, Evie, because the video circuits will read the video memory and output, but the processor won't have access to that memory with bank enabled pulled low. So
right. The video chip talks directly to those two chips that are used to store the video memory. Sorry, somebody had a question?
I'm sorry. This is Andrew. Wasn't the left joystick port also supposed to be for not just joystick, but another function? And, it's been so long. Wasn't it also supposed to be something like a MIDI port?
On the 2068?
Yes.
That would have to be software enabled, because both of those ports just go into the AY sound chip, and then they're just bit addressed.
Yeah,
I recall that there was another purpose for the left joystick port on the 2068 that Timex had advertised.
Huh.
Well, it would have to be software controlled, because right now the ROM, I've looked at the disassembled ROM, and it sets those up, sets the AY chip up as inputs. So
Evie, the part of the reason that the other folks are saying, leave the joystick port on and shoot for Spectrum emulation is because there's just so much you know,
there's a lot of software,
and so many folks, that's what they use their 2068 to do back then, and use it to do now. You know, they slap a Spectrum ROM in the cartridge port and you know, use it to run whatever. You mentioned that you can load doc files. Were you thinking about being able to load tape files?
Yeah, I mean, that's already supported on Spectrum. So
okay.
So all I have to do is get the ROM substituted. The only challenge there is to get the bank enable turned on at exactly the right time, and then turned off at exactly the right time. And you know, because BackBit's running on a CPU, you know, that has to happen. You know, it's not like with the FPGA where you can say if this then that. You know, you have to say, okay, well, let me check if this is in this state and track the clock or whatever. But
right.
But I've actually found that for the most part, Z80 is like a really stable bus, which is like the opposite of the 6502, just because well, I mean, it has to do with like it also has to do with the Z80 has a read and a write enable, where 6502 it's like just one pin for both.
Yeah.
So, and also Z80 has the memory request pin. So it's just Z80 is set up where it's just a much cleaner bus, regardless of how the rest of the system is designed.
We've always felt that it was much superior to the 65.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it really is. It really is a much more mature processor.
I wonder how much of that would any of that have been a reason for it being popular for CPM?
Well, I mean, it was also, I mean, it's like the MSX standard.
Right.
Well, I think it probably comes from the fact that it was, you know, akin to the 8080.
Yeah, the CPM started on the on the 8080 and the Z80.
Oh yes, that's why it was, because it was compatible.
Well, and designed by the same person.
Yeah.
Whose name now escapes me, but yeah.
Federico.
Yeah, so there's so many Z80 systems: the Amstrad, CPC, Aquarius, Bally, ColecoVision, Atom, MSX, Spectrum, TS2068, and ZX81.
Don't forget the trash 80s, man. That was the whole point of the name.
That was 6809.
No,
well,
the
color computer.
We're talking about.
I haven't done the original trash 80 yet.
Yeah.
Evie's talking about the systems she supports, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But
so David, I was trying to follow what you were talking about with the ROM. So were you saying that would or wouldn't work with a Spectrum ROM and the cartridge port?
Her system?
At the same time.
It should work with a.
Yeah. So the expansion bus pretty much exposes the same signals as the cartridge plus a few extras. So anything you can do with the cartridge, you can do with the expansion port.
Well, Evie, I think.
Well, what you were talking about of putting the ROM, having a Spectrum ROM that if you could have just the regular one on the cartridge, if that was accessible. I was getting confused with the select thing.
Well, so the way I do it on most systems is I go to the menu and I'll have an option in the menu that'll say BIOS, and then you pick which, you configure a BIOS ROM, and then you pick that, and then next time you start up, it'll have it up.
That's a good question. Do you have a Spectrum ROM that you can select in this case for the 2068?
You'll be able to put whatever ROM you want in there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So then you wouldn't need one in the cartridge port, it sounds like, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It'll provide its own.
But I guess maybe Ryan's trying to ask if you did have one in there already. I don't know what the BackBit would do with that, because obviously there's signals on the 2068 that are not on the Spectrum because of the SCOD that's in the 2068, right? Instead of the ULA that's in the Spectrum. Doesn't do the same, there's no bank switching or anything like that in the Spectrum, at least not in the the early ones, the rubber keyed ones, right, which were kind of basically talking about here, because that's what
I mean,
2068 is based on.
Depending on how your cartridge is designed, there might be some contention, but if it's just substituting the ROM and you don't substitute a ROM on BackBit, then it probably shouldn't conflict.
Yeah, it should
probably be interesting to try. It'd be interesting to try, but it's interesting that you have the capability to put a different ROM on your cartridge to boot the 2068 into. That's interesting.
Yeah, you'd need. You run into the problem of it's difficult to boot a Spectrum ROM from the cartridge without an intervening basic step, right? But having said that, Bob Orfelt gave some patches for the Spectrum ROM that you could burn into an EEPROM, and it would boot from the cartridge without having to do an out command.
Yeah, I think you'd have to convert it to an LROS. So you'd have to put the header bytes for a assembly language ROM replacement in to make it a cartridge for the 2068, and it should work.
Yeah,
without having to do that.
You have to hack the lowest reset, the RST0, a little bit.
This is the reason Evie wants to avoid all of this. Right. She's looking for another system. She's like, I want to move on to something better.
Oh, I mean, the thing is that BackBit will boot up. It'll boot up, and it can change ROMs on the fly. So it's not like.
Yeah, even you can use a straight up 48K, what's called a 48K Spectrum ROM. It's actually a 16K ROM, but the 48K part refers to basic Spectrum.
I think I already have the 48. Well, I think I have a 128K ROM in there just to do the hijack on the Spectrum.
Okay.
When are you going to have that interface available for
this adapter?
Yeah, the adapter for
probably in a couple of weeks, because I'll be ordering the boards probably today or tomorrow.
Okay.
It's actually good you told me now, because I have to go back and re-add that joystick port.
And I know I've opened up the cartridge just to see what's inside, and it's totally impressive that it's just the one chip. I thought there might be some other glue logic. Yeah, there's just the one ST micro that you talked about.
Brains and flash ROM built into the chip, and a megabyte of user RAM on the chip, and
cool, very cool.
And then one question for you, Evie. Would it be possible to get a license or something from you so that someone who's crazy enough might want to write some software for the BackBit to do some things?
Can you tell me an example of like what you might want to do?
Well, what I'm thinking about, and I saw that you had a doc file running, which means that you now have to be able to page in memory on your BackBit module to be the doc file, since that has to be loaded in the doc bank. If you have enough RAM on externally, then you'll have everything you'd need to be able to bank switch in and essentially memory expand the 2068 as well.
Yeah, I can implement that.
So, I mean, this is a very interesting product, especially since you're not using unobtainium, or at least not much unobtainium.
Well, I only have about 10 cartridges left for sale, and then they're out of stock until whenever they're available next.
The STMs.
Yeah, so I ordered another 1,000 chips, but there's like no estimate as when they're going to be here. So it could be a year, I don't know. But I've got some other projects to focus on, so I'm not like super.
Well, that brings up a question then. Since you said you ordered another 1,000 chips, my serial number is 1177. Does that mean I have number 1,177?
Not is that exactly? There's a bit of a gap because when I switch to the Pro, I'll like round up one of the higher numbers just so it's easier to track things. So. Yeah, I mean,
mine's 1130, Adam. So I got you beat there.
Well, I have a larger number, so mine's better. So
plus mine's red. I got the red one.
So when I switched over to the Pro, I bumped up the number from 500 something to 1,000. So it's probably about 400 less than that actual number of cartridges.
Wow.
And actually, since you're on here, Evie, I probably should just send you an email in any case, but I wanted to get a bunch of the adapters because I've got a bunch of these machines. Right. And I think it was like $200 worth of adapters. I don't know if we could work out some kind of deal. I'm not saying, they're not worth $20 a piece, but, if I'm going to get like, I don't know how many there were, 10 of them maybe, if we could work out some kind of.
Yeah, just send me a message, because I'm always like looking for someone to help with, testing.
Don't make a deal with Carl. Don't make a deal with Carl.
Come on, man.
The devil.
I got TIs. I just got a Commodore VIC-20. I got a Commodore 64. I've never had those machines in my life. I never used them as a kid. So they're kind of new to me now, but I mean, I even got some of the damn disk drives for that Commodore, the 14 or the 1741. Yeah.
1541. I'm sorry to hear that. It's too bad.
Yeah. Well, the Timex
okay,
was my, yeah.
Evie,
Timex was my baby, and then I moved on to PCs pretty much right after that. So,
Evie, this is way off topic, but how much? This is for Commodore 64. How much RAM is available in the BackBit? And I probably should look at your website. Do you have an REU capability for the Commodore 64?
So it's 1 megabyte of RAM. I don't currently do REU. There are a ton of people who are like making REU type things now since when that Sonic came out. It might be possible in theory. I just haven't wanted to invest a lot of time in it because partly because I'm trying to branch out from Commodore. I don't want my user base to be like all Commodore people. I'm really trying to grow the other systems. So it's possible in theory that I could do REU at some point. I've got so many other projects. I just don't. It's also probably one of the least fun type of projects for me because it's like a pure signal project, and it's just doing that type of stuff with the CPU is a lot more tedious than doing it with FPGA. So it's just that kind of problem to solve is just really in a lot of ways more. It's just not very fun.
No, I understand because I launched an FPGA based REU out and some people have built it, but again, unobtainium.
Well, hopefully that problem will resolve itself here in at least maybe 2 years. But here and now,
I may not be alive then.
Yeah, hopefully you will be. You don't look that old to me.
And that's why I do software only, not hardware.
Just not that old.
We're not going to start this competition, are we?
No, software has its benefits, and hardware. To me, I'm a hardware kind of guy too. Right?
Well,
software
I have some questions for you. Some questions since we have you on here, Evie, and I don't know how often you'll be talking with us. Since when you basically started this, it wasn't too long ago. Can you tell us, how similar this was to some of the other Z80 systems you worked on, and some of the challenges you had, and
the Timex?
What was hard? Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, it's not. It wasn't a ton of work to make this work. Usually what I do is I'll hold off working on a project till I get excited about it, or there's it's just I have to focus first on my motivations, and I think there's a million things I probably could do, but it's not like I have somebody with a whip saying do this. So
well, there is Adam.
Mainly over the past month, I've just been spending a lot of time and effort just building stuff, trying to clear through my backlog. And since that eased up, and I went to VCF West, and so mainly it was just kind of clearing things off my schedule and clearing things off my desk And so, so the other day I pulled it up, so okay, now I can work on this. And no, it's really like, I mean, I kind of banged my head against the wall for a few hours, but the main thing, the main trick was the ROSCS signal. That is like the major difference in talking to the machine is, you have to check for that signal. And then other than that, I had to make a little hook. It's to pretend I'm a cartridge. It's just like an 8-byte sequence that says, yes, I'm something you can run, and this is the memory bank setup I want, and this is the address to jump to. And just with like an 8-byte sequence, I could say, jump to my, set up the memory bank so that address 0000 points to my cartridge, and just basically run the same code that it runs on the Spectrum. And that, I mean, it was actually kind of amazing because I get these hunches, and I had this hunch that said, what if it just worked all of a sudden? I look at the screen and I see the BackBit logo, and I said, oh my God, how is it even, sometimes I wonder, it's like, I didn't even do enough steps to make this work, and it already works. So
yeah, luckily it is pretty much based on the Spectrum, right? Yeah, it does have that SCLD in there, and it does have some added features. Obviously, Timex was looking to put in there. And you were mentioning something about tape files, and maybe that has something to do with the
I mean, then I had to, parse the doc files, and like Crazy Bugs worked right away, but like Qbert didn't work, and so Qbert really needed one other little fix to get Qbert to work happily, because I think Qbert loads at the top of memory. Oh, so the way what I did to get that to work was that instead of resetting the machine to immediately start up Qbert, instead of that, I have my browser code say, is the BackBit cartridge still here? And if not, jump to the top of memory, because Qbert wouldn't boot up from a reset, but it would boot up if I jumped to the top of memory.
I was just thinking because the tape files, the load and save, machine code is actually in the XROM, right? So that kind of has a bank switch to the XROM to run the tape files, to run the tape routines. So, that's kind of that's, whereas in the original Spectrum ROM, obviously they're in the 16K ROM, right? There's only one ROM in the Spectrum, whereas this one actually has the two. So
yeah, I'll have to do some more work. So the way I work is kind of like, I just set up a queue of things. Like I just fixed a bug on the +4 that has been in my bug list for probably months, but I just finally just got a burst of inspiration to go work on it, and I set it up, and I found it. It was like the vector call to close the command channel. It was like not working based on the bank configuration, and it's like, sometimes I just need to stop working on something altogether to get in the frame of mind where I can really make some progress on it.
Congratulations on keeping all these hardware architectures in your mind, because I mean, all these machines, I know they work with the BackBit, but they're hardware wise quite different.
I find it really amazing that it was Thursday when I finally decided I was going to get out and have the time to work with your cartridge, and I decided I was going to use it on the system that simply it was going to probably be the most stable that I own, which is the Atari 8-bit. And so I hooked it in, it worked. Then I plugged it into my Astrocade and it worked. And I didn't have to do anything. It just worked. I mean, yes, I had to plug in power for the Astrocade. I didn't have to do that for the Atari, so I had to go into the light pen jack, but it worked.
Which Atari system do you have?
I have the 130XE. Well, I have a lot of them, but that's the one I use it on.
Did you hook up the reset pin?
I didn't need to.
Oh.
It just resets. So if I press reset and then hold the red button down, it just does a hardware reset.
Yeah, I like having those connected.
Yeah, it works really, really.
I think that
it's strange that.
Do you have the peripheral expansion bus? It's got that extra bus on there.
I have the 130XE, the 800. I have all of them. So I have.
No, I mean the 130XE has like that extra bus.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I have it, but I don't have anything that plugs into it.
Because I was thinking maybe that exposes the reset pin, so you could do.
I don't know.
I think what Evie is trying to say is that, I think some of the machines that she supports, you have to hook up an extra pin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm able to reset it. All I have to do is hold the reset on the machine and press the reset on the button on your cartridge.
It's just because I'm lazy and I only want to have to press one button.
Hey, I'm lazy too. I don't need to hook up anything else. I'll just plug it in. Come on.
I guess her idea of lazy is hooking up a wire. Or no, holding down. Well, I don't know.
I just don't want to have to remember any extra
special buttons. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's also
Adam's able to remember up to 2 buttons.
Right.
The +4, the Commodore +4 is unique because it's got a kind of reverse reset. So if you press reset, it'll inform the cartridge that the system's being reset, but the cartridge itself can't reset the system. So it's like the opposite of how most systems work.
That's interesting.
But it's also interesting, just so everybody knows that like Adam was alluding to, you can have Atari files in there, you can have Commodore files in there, you can have Timex, Sinclair, right, and you don't have to do anything special with the cartridge. You just put them all on the SD card, right? And you obviously want to have some kind of directory structure there for all of these things, but it'll all just work no matter what system you're plugging into.
I'm open to adding just about any feature, and really probably my biggest motivation for adding a feature is you say, oh, here's this game that a bunch of people like playing. Can you make this load on the machine? And so that's probably one of my biggest motivations. I mean, the doc files, I got crazy bugs working. It's like, okay, great. That's some. It's like a clear goal I can work towards. If I see that graphics on the screen, that's my reward, and that's what I work for.
I noticed that you specifically made sure to get Bounty Bob Strikes Back to work on the Atari, which is one of the best games for the Atari, and these bank switching schemes. That's unusual.
It's funny because it's not just a complicated programming scheme for that machine. It's like every machine they made, Miner 29 and Bounty Bob, like whatever company made that program, they were really concerned about copy protection. And so they're like, let's just make a totally unique scheme. And so no one will be able to figure out how to copy our cartridge.
Very cool. That's very cool. So I want to open the floor to anybody else. If Adam, are you out of questions?
I think Tim H has something.
Tim?
Is that right?
Well, don't forget, Evie said she has like about 10 cartridges still available. So if you guys are interested in getting one,
just not very many.
Well, I just placed an order for 10 just a minute ago, so they're gone now.
I got mine in before yours, and Adam. So you're SOL, buddy.
Tim, do you have something to add, or something not to add?
Actually, I only have 6 left.
Uh-oh, she's not kidding.
Glad I got mine.
So yeah, I just wanted to point that, I know I mentioned it a long time ago, and I know Adam kind of got one. I had one on order since April, I think, with Evie, but of course that was with the original, I guess, backlog.
And so just so you know, like if you get the BackBit cartridge, I'm even though the cartridges are going to be unavailable for a while, I'm still making the adapters, and this is my full-time thing, so it's not like I'm going to go get some other job and then just drop the whole project. And if I ever ran into a different line of work that was taking so much of my time that I didn't have time to work on this stuff anymore, I would certainly hand it down to someone else. So
Evie,
it's not going away.
Jamie had a question. Does the BackBit support a USB connection to a host?
No, it doesn't, and that was something I did on purpose, because it's just I like focusing on the retro, low frequency stuff. It just, if you add wireless or USB, it's this whole new can of worms, and I want to focus on the retro stuff.
Very
so
cool.
That's, and I mean, and the other thing is I kind of like the offline experience of just, you're just you and the old machine. You're not like hooked up to this big infrastructure. I don't know. That's part of what I like about it.
What's kind of nice, again, it's kind of seems to be a labor of love for you for all of this. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say that that's the case for almost all of us.
Yeah, certainly not for a job.
But it might be possible in theory to get some kind of SD card adapter. Can't you get a card? Can't you get an adapter that you could hook up an SD card to some kind of
Yeah. Somebody has a Wi-Fi SD card or did. I don't know if it's available anymore. Tim Horner.
Yep.
Your question.
I didn't have a question.
Oh, I thought you had you were going to give us some updates.
Oh,
I was going to do a little show and tell, but just when it fits in,
please.
Yeah.
It's your turn. Otherwise, I'll talk all night long.
And frequently do.
Oh,
shots fired.
Hey, thanks, Evie, for all the work on that, man. I know it didn't take too long to do it, obviously, but I know I for one appreciate the 26.8, and I look forward to talking with you about getting that adapter as well as a lot of other ones. So, thanks.
Yeah, and I definitely want to add support for more types of programs and bias replacement tapes and all that. So
yeah, because I know I sent you
the roadmap.
Because I sent you the thing on because your forms say the Cocoa 2 and 3, but I just got a Cocoa 1, right? The first Cocoa. And I
think Cocoa 1, it should work. I haven't tested it, but I don't think there's really anything dramatically different about the hardware.
Yeah, it looks like it's compatible. Right. So I just need to get
should work.
I
can't wait for someone to test it, but obviously the original TRS-80 is not going to work.
Right. Anyway, thanks, Evie.
And the other thing is that I like having more systems. So if any of you have old junker systems you're trying to get rid of, like I take those on.
Tim, I'm going to spotlight you, so you stay pinned for a second while you do your show and tell.
I sort of, I'm like Eva, I get motivated to do something. And so my thing I did over the last week was just getting the printers working, and the ZX printer, the one that works on like silver foil paper, and the TS2040, the sort of thermal printer. And so I want to get all things printer going. So first up was just taking the Timex Sinclair out of the loop and just printing straight from a well, at the moment it's an Arduino, but it could be anything, to the printers, and then Willie brought up a great thing of being able to plug it into a Windows machine. So I was playing with that over the weekend, and so the idea there was from Windows you could then print to one of the old printers.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So I can print to another computer, so I can sort of it renders to another computer. I just got to get the little link from there onto the actual print. There's sort of a problem with buffering and flow control, but we'll get over that.
So, Tim, are you saying that you have been able to get it to print from a Windows machine?
I've got another computer listening on a serial port, running a little bit of Python, and I can print from one of the laptops. I can print along the serial port to another laptop, just being rendered on the screen. So it's emulating a printer just in Python at the moment. And the idea is, because that's just sorting out all the protocol stuff, all the escape code stuff. And then the problem with sending it to an Arduino is it's only got like 2K of RAM. And if I sort of hold back the Windows machine, another laptop's fine, it can suck it all in. But if I hold back the with a bit of flow control, it sort of says the printer error, and there's some issues around that. So I've got to solve that. But since I can print to the printer from a microcontroller, and I can send printout from a Windows machine to some bit of code, they're both halves, both sides of the bridge are there. I just need to sort of join the middle bit, and then it should work.
That's crazy.
Ooh, that'd be neat.
Yeah, the Windows printing was quite cool. David suggested looking at Epsom's Escape P, but because a lot of that was on printers made in the 80s. But interesting enough, there's a market for impact printers, 9-pin impact printers even now. So and of course the problem with the old 80s stuff is you can't get drivers for Windows 10 and the likes. But they do have drivers for 9-pin impact printers that they produce today. You can buy on Amazon. So I went and found one of them. grabbed the driver for it, I pointed it at a serial port, and then just decoded the escape escape P, however you pronounce it. I decoded that stuff and jammed it on the screen. It's yeah, it worked quite well. Just a problem with the memory at the moment, but we'll get over that.
Yeah, because I know looking, I'm kind of remembering some of the machine code that drives the printer. You know, it's pretty simple. It's a simple interface. It's just one bit, I think, right, that tells it, you know, to burn a black or not burn a black, and it fills a buffer. I mean, it's not a complex interface, but the complexity comes in from figuring out what's Windows dumping to the printer and converting that into something, right, that you can actually see an output on the 2040, since it is such a simple printer.
Yeah, writing to it turned out to be harder than you'd expect. It turns out that there's a bit of documentation about it, and then there's the actual disassembly. But it turns out, you know, every time you want to write to the printer, you have to do a read, and there's some sequencing there. It's not as straightforward as it might have sounded. Like, you know, I went through reams and reams of paper of failures of doing this, where I you know, just get junk come out and eventually beat it. It took quite a few hours to sort out.
That is just like the 1980s. Then I had so much crappy printouts that I would print out, like it happened all the time. So nothing's changed apparently.
Yeah, and so this is just trying to sort out the bits you need to flip on and off to chat to it, and getting them in the right order. And yeah, it wasn't as straightforward as it sounded. Anyway, so I mean, I could flip on a show and tell, or I could share a screen. Oh, well, actually, maybe I'll flip cameras and do a show and tell if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me stop the video, flip on a light, and switch cameras. So theoretically, I should be on wobbly cam, shaky cam.
So good.
There's a Arduino. There's a sort of a board that I got this little shield that you sort of plug on the top of an Arduino,
oh really? It's like a ZX81 bus shield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I didn't know they made that. Okay.
Well, they don't.
Oh, you did. You designed it. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So this is the one where it pretends to be a cartridge, but the one that's on here actually pretends to be a ZX81, and that plugs cable into a, and I've got a little serial port on it, so I can sort of say write a message. No printer attached. Must be have to reset it. Bear with me, team.
We know
Tim. You know, Tim. That printer would look a lot better if it was silver.
Oh, it's not detecting it for some reason. Failed.
Well, if you turn off your camera, it'll work again. As long as you don't show it to us, it'll start working.
Schrodinger's printer, huh?
Uh-oh. We see motion.
Yeah, it says hello.
Yep.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah, so just need to be reset. Yes, so there you go. And I've also got, if I sort of shuffle that back, the little oil-based one, which it was actually the harder one. The 2040, it's the ULA in it's much simpler to drive, but this was the one that I went through reams of paper to sort of get working, and it just plugs in the same thing. It needs 9 volts. The other one uses like 20-something volts. Yeah. But yeah, it all seems to work.
The smaller printer, that's the printer you 3D printed your own belt, is that right?
Yeah. The this guy here at I said I'm doing this whole retro kick, and so my partner sort of said, "Do you want one for Christmas?" And I said, "Only if it's broken." And so she bought 2 broken ones, and it came with 2 broken printers. So And then she sort of thought, oh, I could only get these two broken machines, and she never thought I'd play with the printers. And then a few months ago, I found the STLs. I found the files to print a belt, and someone happened to suggest I have the right filament. It's a sort of rubbery filament, and printed the two belts. I mean, they sell them online for $10 or £10 or something, but it works out as about 5 cents worth of filament and takes about 15 minutes to print. And with a bit of fiddling,
you just got to make sure you have the two little spring things, because if you get a printer that you're missing those, I don't know that anybody makes those. They're kind of a specific thing.
Yeah, you could fabricate. There's only a bit of bent wire, but you're exactly right. It is much better to have them. Fortunately, the two printers, the belt was just shattered inside them, and the two little springy things were just still attached to little segments of the belt. And amazingly, I'm astounded it works, because it's just a little metal wire that touches the top and then touches the paper. Put it on, hit print on it, and it just came out.
Yeah, no, my folks had a Casio little calculator. It was a home, but a printing calculator, right, that you use to do your bills and stuff on, and use the same paper. It's kind of interesting to see it actually print. I don't know if you can print on the Spectrum one or the ZX printer there with the cover off, so people can see. It actually sparks.
Yeah.
It actually makes sparks.
It's 50 odd volts they put through, and
yes.
Exactly what it does, it burns a hole through the foil. The paper's actually black underneath, and it actually burns the foil off. The metal thing joins from the top through the paper, and then the roll is actually conductive rubber, and then it goes down to ground. And so exactly what it is. It's I'm astounded it works. It's cool. It's actually slightly better quality. I don't have enough voltage on the 2040. It's only 20 odd volts, and it doesn't sort of come very bright. But the ZX printer looks quite good.
So when you're not using it for printing, you can do like electroshock therapy with it, basically. Is that right?
Printing is electroshock therapy.
FCC must have loved that printer.
Oh yeah, that's why we couldn't get it here, because it was just a RF noise generator from hell.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that when you print a lot on it, it smells. It has a certain smell to it from it burning all that stuff off. You can actually smell it.
And inside it's all covered with soot, all the little bits and pieces. You get in there with cotton buds and stuff, and it's just covered with the burnt off pieces, essentially. Yeah.
So that's kind of like the old clock, mantle clock I restored. It's covered with soot inside.
Tim, do you have any hams in your area?
Am I wiping out the Wi-Fi of all my neighbors? Probably.
Yeah, right, exactly. and has anybody showed up in your front yard with pitchforks yet?
The FCC come hunting me down. Yeah.
Had the van circling your house.
I do remember reading back in the day, I don't remember I read it, but all they said was they don't recommend opening it up to have a look inside, but you'd never get it back together.
If you look at the original ZX81 ad that came out in October of '81, they actually showed the ZX printer in the ad. And I was like, oh, when's that coming out? Wrong.
Never.
Yeah, because I think luckily I know I got one. I think I have two of them, but yeah, the belts were, and I just haven't I'd ordered the belts. I think I ordered 2 belts, so I have the belts, but I just haven't got around to fixing the printers. They're really cool too, because they're tiny. I mean, you look at the 2040 and that's not really that big of a printer either, but the ZX printer is like a quarter the size of the 2020, man. It's tiny.
Well,
it is a bit of a hassle to put back together. There's the button sort of has to be balanced, and the 2 little spindles have to be balanced. It's a little bit of a fiddle, and there's a wire that connects onto the spade, the top terminal of the that joins the spark through. And so it's a little bit of juggling, but it's not too bad. I've taken them apart a few times now between various things.
And I know there's a ZX printer service manual online too, if you really wanted to get that far.
I've bought there's a recommended grease they use for the bushes in it. I've bought that, and I re-greased, and that was the second time I opened it up. And there's a like a contact grease for the top wiper that you put on it. So I've sort of re-greased them. That was the second time I opened them up.
Interesting.
Tim, one of the things that sort of started this whole series of meetings was a conversation I had with Stuart Neufeld. I feel like 18 months or so ago, and he has, you know, a bunch of 2040s or Alphacom 32s sitting in a storage unit in Pennsylvania, and he's involved also in a local makerspace in Brooklyn, I believe. And he, you know, he was like, I want to get rid of these things. You know, is there anybody out there that could, you know, do some programming and hook it up to an Arduino? I was like, well, you know, I don't see why not, because, you know, somebody's written some code. I found an obscure piece of code that somebody had written, I think, to for DOS to talk to one of those printers. And so now we've come full circle, and we can just shut down the meetings because we've solved the problem.
You're here. You're here.
It started the whole thing.
Finally.
So I saw Stuart had a bounty thing over on Sinclair World where he sort of said, you know, I want to get this going, and I'm willing to invest in someone's time to do it. I bumped into that when I was hunting. When you mentioned something about the Sinclair Export, I had a little thing on there, and I saw that from about the beginning of last year.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Because I think I pointed him there. Yeah.
No, I mean, I was going to put the code up, but I just want to get this Windows printing bit going as well, and then I'll put the code up. Anyone can do it then. I don't see why not.
That'll be hilarious, amazing, and hilarious.
I can't wait.
Right. And Willie's just holding his breath over there because
I've probably got 7 of those 2040 printers.
Yeah, I was originally just going to do the ZX printer, but then I saw everyone here was into that, and I managed to buy a never opened inbox TS 2040, so it was still in its plastic wrappers, and
wow.
Yeah. So I got to cut them open and bring it out. So, and then the paper was very, very dark, 40 years old paper that came with the printer. But it turns out the local office supplier sells exactly the right paper, the right width and the right size, and so got some new, and they're like $5 New Zealand dollars, probably $3 US a roll. So I got some paper for it, and that works well better. The paper that came with it is, I think chemically it's past its day, and so. But yes.
Once they get too old, it just doesn't. The chemical doesn't react to the heat anymore, so it doesn't really show up.
I knew that the paper was available like online, but it's so common for like receipt printers that you can just get it locally? Like, is that unusual, or is that you were just lucky? No,
the normal 80 mil FPOS printers, that's very common. And this is like 110, I'm sorry, metric, but it's slightly wider than the normal FPOS paper. But no, it's very common. You can pay a lot and get sort of stuff from that's supposed to be compatible, but this is the right size, and fortunately the TS 2040 doesn't have a spindle for the paper. It just sits loose, so you don't have to worry about the spindle in the middle being the right size. The ZX printer, there's actually 2 little end bits, so the cardboard in the middle has to be the right size. So as long as it's thermal paper and it's the right width, it'll run through.
I've actually heard of people cutting down larger rolls right to the size so they fit. They'll buy a larger roll and they'll cut it down to size.
Yeah, you used to be able to get the fax paper like that, and if you split it right in half, you ended up with 2 rolls.
Right.
It was a perfect size. So yeah.
And it just goes through 2 rubber rollers, so there's nothing special about it. I suppose they warn you about it. If you use too rough a paper, then you can damage the print head, but none of that thermal paper is very rough. Anyway, so
one of the things that one of the guys in the Fort Worth user group sold, he'd made these little circular discs that were the right size, and because the paper would tend to walk to one edge, so to keep the printout centered, he'd made these little discs and he stuck it on one side. I've got it in my printer that kept it more centered. I remember that.
Was that about the thickness of a penny? Because I seem to recall reading that you could use a coin to do
Poker chips work great.
Poker chips. Okay, so a little bit thicker than a penny.
You bet your life they do.
Yeah, poker chip probably would.
Okay.
The other thing too, remember, I'm remembering of the 2040 is, and I think I told Adam this is, once it heats up, because it's got a big heat sink in there, because you're right, it has a 24 volt DC power supply that goes in there, and it heats up, right? And I don't know why, but it just has a certain smell. It's got electronics, warm electronic smell to it when it's on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not the smallest power supply in the world. Pretty chunky.
Yeah, it needs that high voltage, right, to for the thermal print head. It uses that 24 volts to burn that paper.
Yeah,
only
thing I hated about it is the cord, is so short. So I went through about 5 of mine and put a longer cord on them so I can put the printer wherever I want, and it works really well.
Yeah, I couldn't use the one out of the box because we don't have 110 with 220 volts here side to use it. And then unfortunately I don't have like a 24 volt one. I've got a 22 volt one, and so it's a bit too cold. But and so it doesn't quite darken up the pixels. I've got to get another power supply. But yeah, it works.
Well, and Tim, because I've been going through, I scanned big piles of newsletters, and now I'm going through and indexing them, and there was a period in time when someone figured out that you could in essence do a user-defined kind of graphics thing with the 2068 characters and get them to print twice, and I think it would just shift it a little bit to the left in order to get a super dark printout on the 2040.
Yeah, I think so. I remember something about it because there was somebody that had like a font program or something that would make like really dark print on the 2040. Yeah.
Yep.
Since it can't go back over itself, once as it's feeding and burning, it can't reverse right and do it again. It just not. Maybe somebody could program that in there, but I don't. The chip that's in there can't reverse. There is no reverse.
Right. It actually prints they use the same drive, so it's actually printing a slightly diagonal line, because, and then when it hits the right hand side, when it starts the other side, it's on the next pixel down. So yeah, you're right. It forward only, and it sort of moves the platen at the same time as it goes across.
All the engineering, man, that we did back then, huh?
Yeah, right. I think there's a new Jeff with us. This will be probably Jeff number 3 is my guess.
Jeff in blue will call you right now.
Okay, yeah, you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm the Jeff that keeps asking all the AROS questions. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we're working on it. I spent the better part of yesterday putzing with it, and except I chose a program that already uses all of when it boots up.
Can we back up just a because I'm not actually sure Jeff, exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Talk about what you want to accomplish.
Like when Wordle became popular, I don't know, a couple months ago, whatever, it just seemed like a simple thing to get me back into retro computing. So I bought a Jupiter Ace, but then thinking, okay, midlife crisis, I'll learn fourth. Well, fourth's not my thing. So I thought, let me go back to the Timex Sinclair thing. And the fact I never had a 2068. I grew up with a Timex Sinclair 1000 and then moved to the TI 99 and then had a QL and then bought the 2068. And it's kind of a wicked neat machine. And the fact it's got the cartridge slot, I thought, well, I've never made a hardware cartridge. So I thought a simple game that maybe I could make a cartridge and then use like load to add word lists, like customized word lists for a word game. And then the more I started reading about how flexible, using those 8 bytes or whatever to kind of configure the boot port. And it was just kind of interesting. So that's why I started using emulation and stuff to kind of understand how to kind of do the basics of it. And like I say, when I got the letter A to print on the screen and the Z80 code and the basic code, actually get that, it's like, oh, kind of a cool moment. It's a simple thing, but at least I knew enough to kind of get that working. And then, if I can kind of get everything working the way I want, actually burn a EEPROM, put it in that cartridge board that you sell, and actually boot up a cartridge and actually make my own, it's just, I don't know, these little things that kind of never really done before and just kind of wanted to play with. And then, like I say, once I found this group and I listened, I guess about 2 months ago, I was kind of like one of those lurkers in the corner, listening to the group and everything, kind of see what everybody's specialty was and just learn how much knowledge there was, in the community and stuff. It was just kind of neat. And so I felt more confident as far as kind of starting to ask questions from the group and everything. So, yep.
Well, Jeff, I'm glad you found us. I'm glad you joined the group, and I'm glad you joined our Zoom.
Yeah,
it's fun to have new people and hear everybody's own their own little interests. And you and I, it sounds like we both share a real fascination with what you could do with the cartridge port stuff on the 2068. Yeah, that's one of my favorite, most interesting things about the 2068.
Yeah, I'm excited because of the BackBit cartridge. It's how simple it is to put a new cartridge on there. You just take out the micro SD card, put it on the FAT32, and push it back in, and you're done. It takes a second or two, and it's simple. So and it acts just like a cartridge. So, or at least on other systems it does. I think that's how it's going to work. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think what Tim's thing is, putting yourself back into myself back into 83 and doing those kind of things that he's doing. Yeah, I totally understand what the feelings that you're getting, right? Because it's like, hey man, it works. I actually did something and it worked. I understand it. And the AROS and the LROS stuff is certainly explained in the technical manual, but there's no examples really, right? So it's up to you to, I guess, kind of, hey, I got this basic program. Let's see if I can make a cartridge out of it, right? There is no examples in the technical manual to give you an example of a basic program that they converted. So that would be kind of nice to see somebody do, so we can understand the variables, right, where they need to get loaded for a basic program. Machine language, not so much, because you're not using the variables, right, for a machine language. But then again, there's machine language / basic programs, which will still need, right, your variables to go into the right spot. And then, of course, LROS cartridges, which, those are machine code only, kind of not necessarily ROM replacements, but they could be, right? And that's kind of where I think, what's his name, David, you were talking about, you can go back and actually make an LROS Spectrum cartridge.
Yeah.
Right, because because I have the Spectrum cartridge for the TC 2068, right? And that isn't a cartridge thing. It's a little thicker, obviously. We talked about that. It won't fit in the TS 2068, but it's a cartridge. You plug it in and it boots up. No extra fancy things you need to do.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to ask Jeff a question. Jeff, you said you only found us a couple of months ago. Are you aware that back in like March or something that we had someone on here named Greg, he might even be on here tonight, who had ported over Wordle to the ZX81, and he talked about it?
No, I've only, I think, listened to one meeting, and then darn life and work and stuff. I kind of missed some of the meetings.
Right.
I don't know how much that affects you guys, but it's like, dang it, And so, no, I haven't watched some of the stuff that's recorded. So I'm really far behind, but no, I did not know that.
Well, I'll try to find it quick, and I'll put a link in the chat so you can find where he talks about his, and you can also download the program, and if you want to check it out, it's for the 81 and not the 68, but it's written in BASIC, so
true.
You might want to check it out and see how it works.
Yeah, I was just trying to pick something simple, and I know BASIC, I was kind of warned, writing a cartridge in BASIC's gonna be slow and to expect things like that, but just it seemed like unique, and like I say, I did put in the email that I'd forgotten the TI-99. Some of the first cartridges for it were written in BASIC, but they're not documented that well And it just, I don't know, the flexibility of the 2068 is just kind of amazing to me, you know, just kind of nifty. So it was just kind of a neat thing to explore.
So Jeff, I think, did you link to the Atari Age discussion about those TI cartridges?
Yes, yeah, I put the Atari.
I went down that rabbit hole. That was pretty nifty.
Yeah, you know, and like I said, because I read up on the neat stuff the TI's done too. You know, a lot of the enthusiasts, you know, have been doing some really cool stuff, you know, and this BackBit thing is like, my God, you know, just the retro computing, I guess I kind of fell out of it so long, and you kind of miss some of the things that the other systems have really, some of the cool stuff we would have had so many years ago, you know, and just to make it easier to kind of get back into the hobby, it's just, God, it's appreciated, you know, and it's just, you know, the excitement. I can't feel like a kid again. You know, it's like my dad just got his, or my grandfather's tractor, you know, he's like a kid waiting for Christmas. And I'm kind of like waiting for Christmas, waiting for some of the cartridge boards to come in, or the EPROMs, you know, and actually burn an EPROM, which I haven't burned in forever, you know, and just go through the motions, you know. It's like, yeah, it's the little things.
It's ironic these days that actually getting the period correct EPROMs is pretty hard.
Oh,
yeah. And if you do get them, they're pretty damn expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, that's kind of funny. You know, back then, I mean, they weren't cheap even back then, but, you know, now it's almost like easier just to get a flash version of it, right? That way you don't have to worry about the erasing it and all that kind of stuff. Just get a flash version of that EPROM. That way you can just, you know, erase it on the fly with like a, you know, those TL866 programmers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since TI has come up a couple times, I don't know if you guys know this, when Timex was working on the 2068, they brought in some new folks, and Lou Gailey and folks from Burroughs came in, right? Lou and Lon, who was on with us a few episodes back, came from Burroughs. Rex Naden and Kirk Pond came from TI, and Rex Naden was in charge of the production of the 99.4A in, I think he said he was in Lubbock, and he came from TI to Timex to work on the 2068, which was.
And it's funny that Jeff mentions that he went to the TI, or he's gone to the TI 99, and then come to the 2068.
Right.
You know, because the 99 was out years before the 2068 ever came out.
yeah. Carl, you and Willie were talking on the email list about how to get video out of a 1500 and into, you know, HDMI if possible. And you mentioned something about a Raspberry Pi based project.
Right. Yeah, I know there's a guy, Retro, I linked it in that discussion. But I don't know if he's doing it, but somebody has created a number of boards, right, that you piggyback onto the Zero. And obviously you're using the Raspberry Pi as your HDMI output because it has an HDMI port on it, right? Mm-hmm. But you can put all kinds of digital, TTL, you know, CGA, EGA, VGA, video into it, and it converts it into HDMI.
Okay.
Right, and it's got a menu on it, so you can select, you know, different modes because different computers put out different video modes, right? So, and there's color correction because I think the Apples and some other computer use a different color code for the RGB, so they don't look right. If you just hook it up to a modern day monitor, the colors aren't right, but you can go in there and change that. You know, the code that they wrote, whoever wrote that, can go in there and change that. But there is also somebody has a little conversion circuit, right? That they hand built, and they have a schematic in that one forum post that converts the monochrome out of the ZX81/1000/1500, converts it into a format that can go into the analog board of that RGB to HDMI. And I think you can get a pixel correct. You know, they talk about it in that post, but I was just kind of, you know, something I looked at probably a year ago or so because I was doing composite conversions on some of mine, and they're still crappy. I mean, they're still crappy, even with those, you know, like the Stuart board. And I wasn't impressed. I was very disappointed actually, and because I got a number of those boards. I think I got 3 or 4 different kinds, and they all were very disappointing. And I was looking at, why don't we just get HDMI out of this thing? And obviously there's some people that have been looking into that. I know there's one for the Spectrum. I think it's a ZX HD product that they call it from, I think, Byte to Light or something like that. And I think it also uses a Raspberry Pi inside that case, but it's designed for the Spectrum, right? And you just plug it into the back of the Spectrum like an expansion cartridge or an expansion thing, and you plug the HDMI cable into it, and there you go. But I don't know. It's just kind of an expensive proposition for the ZX81, but at least the RGB to HDMI can be used for other machines if you wanted to do that. It's not just something you're going to make for the ZX81 and that's going to be it. You could actually use it probably on the 2068, right? Because it could take the RGB out of the back, but we're still limited to the same problem where we don't have bright. So you're not going to be able to get the bright colors. And that's kind of where, you know, I think me and you, David, talked about this quite a while ago. I mean, I got the boards and the parts. I haven't built it yet, but it uses the same chip basically that the European versions of the TI 99 4A use. It's a TMS 9928, I think. But it takes in YUV.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
that chip actually takes in YUV, so I could hook it up theoretically directly inside the 2068 to its YUV lines, right? And I would get the brights, right? Because obviously,
because you would have all,
right. Obviously, I would be getting exactly what the video output of the 2068 is, so the brights would be there. But I just, like I said, I haven't built that board. I tried to buy one, but nobody. You know, the chip shortages and everything, you know, you could buy them assembled, but I think I actually bought the chips and everything. But it's a surface mount device. It's a little bitty, you know, it actually fits over the 40-pin chip, right? You actually put that chip in there and you solder it right on top of the couple of the pins on that 40-pin chip, and you hook it up to some periphery circuitry there, and you'll get an RGB output from it. That's why it's you know. And then, of course, I guess you could hook it into this RGB to HDMI device, and then you would get HDMI out of it.
Right.
So on that, this is RGB to HDMI. I just put it in a case. So I had the boards manufactured and soldered it myself, and this has got the analog in it. So this takes the ZX81 and gives you that pure digital thing. I've also got a 5-pin on it, so it plugs into my Amstrad CPC.
There you go.
And it's there's a Raspberry Pi, there's a CPLD board that can handle sort of digital input like CGI and things like that. And then there's an analog board which it only uses one channel of for the composite because you know it only needs black and white. And so that link you had to Ian's post. Ian, the original guy, Dave goes by the name Hoglet. He did the original one for the BBC. That's the star.org, and there's a forum with about 50 pages of chat. And then after that, Ian, who the post you linked to, jumped on and says, "Hey, can I use the circuit from an Atom to hook into a ZX81?"
Right.
And then he subsequently ditched that and went for a DAC-based system that handles all the analog. So it's a single analog board that can handle anything that's analog. I think it's only 3 bits on each channel. But and that's what's inside this. I'm only using one channel and 1 bit of one channel to do it.
So you wouldn't need, so you don't need that extra circuit that he designed basically then. You just pull the.
Yeah, he's replaced it with this analog board that's more general. It handles RGB with 3 bits instead of just the on and off.
Okay.
And I'm just using the green channel. I think it is the one that they use for the ZX81, and it also picks off the sync pulse. So it picks off the color level and the sync pulse, the horizontal vertical sync. And then it feeds it to the CPL, the digital board, which then talks to Raspberry Pi. And the color thing is because it doesn't have colors. All it knows is it's got bit levels, and so you have to have a palette. And so on the Raspberry Pi, there's a palette for each system. And various people have come in and sort of says, oh, the palette doesn't match the real one. Here's a better palette. And in the ZX81, it's just black and white. But for all the various other systems, you pick the palette that matches. Like apparently the Commodore America palette's different from the Commodore PAL palette, and there's a whole lot of different settings. There's profiles on it. You pick from the profile you want to run.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a good little. I've got another 4 board. You'll have to get 5 boards when you buy them. I could make them up to some one of them. The CPLDs are like a bit unobtainium at the moment. You can't get a Raspberry Pi, but I've got spares of those. So, you know, I could be talking
Hey,
to
Tim,
making up another one.
do you want to move to Albuquerque?
I think we all need to move to Albuquerque is the answer to that.
Well, you know, Tim, I'd certainly be interested in doing one of those, because I was looking at that, and like I said, you couldn't get the Pi Zeros, and I'm like, well, you know, if I can't get the parts, then I'll look at it at another time when that stuff is available. But again, my big thing with that is it's multi-purpose, right? I don't just necessarily want to build something just for the ZX81. You know, it's better that since I'm trying to get more into all these older machines, and so that one definitely fits the bill, because you could use that, like you said, on multiple, you know, vintage machines.
Yeah. It works on the PCs and stuff. It's got heaps of profiles. There's dozens and dozens of ones. I went to plug it into 2068 and I was struggling to get the timing right. So that's something I was meaning to get working as well. But I was only plugged into the composite, and it's going to be noisy, so it's not going to fix that. It's going to help the rendering because it's pixel perfect, but it's not going to help the fact that there's a bit of noise on the colors. And so yeah, that's on my to-do list as well.
Okay. Because I kind of read about that circuit that he designed, and that's basically, you look at it, it's just a comparator circuit, right? So I guess if it's supposed to be black there, then it kind of trips the comparator. If it's supposed to be white, it trips the other comparator. So you get a bit perfect, you know, you don't get any of that noise, I guess. But if he made something better on the newer analog board, maybe it takes that noise away. I'm thinking.
All he's done is he's taken away the pots. There's a DAC on it to select the levels. So within the on-screen menus, you can pick the levels. So I've got a transistor mod in one of my ZX81s, and the levels are like 2.5 volts. And so I have to flick to a different profile for that. But then the ones that are got a VLA81, which is like a ULA replacement, it's at the normal 0.7 volts. So I've got several profiles for the different ZX81s I've got. And I went, like I say, I went to do it for the 2068, but I couldn't get the syncing right. I'll play with it again.
Yeah, the video in the 2068 is a mess.
Oh, and sorry, just a little update while I've got the thing. I had this little which direction? A little board that did the USB for the ZX81, and it wouldn't work on the 2068. But I pulled out the big mess of wires that were the sort of precursor to this, and replaced the driver with like a TTL type driver instead of the CMOS one, and it works fine with the 2068. So the big mess of wires can type into the 2068 through USB. I had to redo all the key mappings because they're all in different places, and there's 2 shift keys on the 2068. There's like a symbol shift and a caps shift. But I can now type on through a big mess of wires and type on the 2068 from my PC. So the next thing I need to do is some keycaps for it, and also then change the drivers on this, the 2 little SMDs to. I've got to order those and change it, and then this board will work on this. So yeah, a little bit of progress on that.
So you're saying a USB keyboard directly into the 2068? Is that what that does?
Yep.
Oh, good.
Wow,
That's
Yeah.
that way I can use whatever keyboard I want on it, and I don't have to ruin the original one, right? It just plugs into the expansion slot.
Yeah. I did it for the ZX81, and so I've got a little board that can sort of take USB in and USB out and does the mapping, and then that plugs via a cable into this that plugs into the back of the ZX81 or the TS2068. Like I said, I've got to change the chips in this. So I've got a breadboard with a big pile of wires I never disassembled, and so I just changed the drivers on that, and it worked fine. It turns out that a few of the lines are driven by the SCLD, and it really wants to have TTL. It wants TTL levels, and so once that was swapped over, it just magically worked.
Oh,
and then it's
okay.
all the
Coming
keys
to
are in
market?
different places.
When is it? What's that they say? When's it coming to market?
Yeah, when's it coming to market?
Yeah, I'm not doing a business, so I mean, I'll get over the little printer thing that I've been distracted by, and then I'll get back to it. The little converter board works for emulators as well, so you can map the keys in through your emulator because it's got USB in and USB out on it. So that's quite good for because my custom keyboard, I've put all the keys in funny places, and you can get to the Astra and a few other things on what was otherwise the curly bracket button, and so you have to map them across to whatever the emulator is expecting. So it works for emulators and real hardware. Go on.
How does it do the mapping? Is it a program that you log into inside that board?
It's cool. There's two off the shelf boards on this on both sides. One's the USB host and one's the USB server. The USB host one actually runs Python and mounts itself as a disk drive, and so you just jump on and there's a config file on the disk drive that you can edit to say what the mapping is.
Hey guys, we're down to just a couple more minutes left, and I know David wanted to set up a time for the next meeting and make sure that we have all that ironed out and all that.
Right. So our next meeting is going to be, the 18th, which is a Sunday at 2 p.m. And I'm just double checking in October, Monday the 3rd, which is not anything special. I was making sure it wasn't, Indigenous Peoples Day or some kind of other conflict. So it looks like we're good. We're every other 2 weeks. Yeah. And I wanted to share my screen real quick because I found this program, and I'm sharing this almost exclusively for Adam's benefit.
Hooray! Okay.
So I found this tiny little program. It's about 5 or 6 lines, and it demonstrates this apparent bug in the draw routine in the 2068, right? So if you're not familiar with the draw routine, with either the Spectrum or the 2068, you plot a point as your starting spot, right? And then the draw command takes coordinates that are relative to that spot, and so you end up drawing a line, right? Instead of specifying, like in some basics, there's a line command that has both the start and stop positions, and this one doesn't. In Sinclair Basic, it's the stop positions, but it also has the ability to draw an arc if you give the right kind of coordinates. So this little tiny program, I gotta remember how to. Well, I'll break out of it in a minute. But if you give it the right set of numbers, it'll demonstrate this really weird thing that happens. Instead of drawing an arc, it ends up drawing a different shape. Now, whoever wrote this program wrote it to cycle through a whole bunch of values, right? And it's using the over command to do a little bit of replacement so it doesn't get too cluttered. So that was the triangle, and I think 375 is the square. So instead of drawing an arc, well, I suppose it's drawing an arc with no curve to it. But it was absolutely fascinating. That if you give it a certain, quantity, certain odd values will end up doing this sort of video artifact instead of.
Are you going to post this to the group so I can check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the problem the mistake I made was typing it into Fuse, just like, instead of typing it into a text editor or having it compiled into Sinclair Basic, I typed it directly into Fuse, and now I have no way to save it.
You can't save as a tape file? Why can't you save as a tape file?
Well, I tried. I'll try again.
Okay.
But the menus don't. I don't know enough about
David,
Fuse to do that. Yes.
If you installed the Fuse utilities,
yes.
Then there's what's it called? List Basic.
Yeah.
And you point and you give it a tape file.
Okay.
And that'll pop your text.
Okay.
That one looks really cool.
Well, you know, David, I just charge them, you know, $2.95 in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and then you can mail it to them.
Is that the whole program? That's it?
That is the whole program. I got to remember.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
I like how you're making it so we can't see it.
That's the whole program.
Well, there you go.
Wow. Okay, I can type that in.
Screenshot that, yeah.
All right.
Right.
That's not going to mess up my RSI.
Right.
So my question is, with Fuse, how do you know you're running a 2068 ROM? I installed Fuse.
Oh,
I can't get a 2068 ROM.
Oh, so it's actually Tim, you're doing it under Linux?
Yeah.
Okay, so there should be a machine, or is it under preferences? Let me just pop up real quick. And okay, so it's under preferences. And first you have to go to the ROM tab and select the Timex TS 2068 ROM, but you also have to go to the machine tab and select the Timex TS 2068. So it's not just one step. There's two steps to this, and then it will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I've done that, I'll have to do it again. I know we're getting toward the end here. So.
But Fuse is pretty nice compared to.
That's interesting, David. I guess I haven't played with. That's the Mac version, right? So.
Yep. Yeah.
I know it has the ROM. I know you can select which ROM to use for which machine.
Yep.
I didn't know you had on there. You have to pick both things to get there. So the one I do is that you just pick the machine, and then it uses the ROM that has been selected for that machine. So I'm wondering, do you actually need to do both steps?
I could do some testing and see, but I
imagine once you pick the machine that you're using on, it would pick a ROM.
Well, so
or it doesn't.
On at least on the Mac, it could just be the Mac. The way that the menus are set up, it's left to right, and so the ROM
I think
comes before the machine menu. So I just worked my way from left to right.
I think the ROM menu lets you select which ROM to use if you want to change that, but I don't think you actually need to pick that.
Okay.
So I've done that where I choose the device. It has the same ROM you've got, but I do reset. It only comes up with Sinclair copyright. Does not come up with a Timex copyright.
Okay. Let me.
Don't forget the 2068 has two ROMs.
Yes. You get to.
You've got the X ROM and the home ROM.
It does fill in both the ROMs as when you select the 2068.
And I know somebody was asking, where do you get the emulators? As far as I know, they're all free, right? You just get them online.
Yeah, most are free.
Yeah, Andy, I will post
so
links.
Tim, are you using the F1 menu in Fuse?
So I'm using the GTK version of Fuse instead of the SDL.
Oh, okay.
So I've got the options. So I can go to machine. I say, where is it at? Options, select ROMs, machine ROMs. I select the 2068. It gives me the ROM.0 and the ROM.1. I say, okay.
Yeah.
I then go to machine reset. I say, okay.
Yeah.
And the only copyright symbol I've got is the Sinclair one.
I've got
the machine ROMs is just selecting which ROMs to use for which machine. You then go into the machine menu and select the machine.
There is no machine to select. Machine menu doesn't have
on.
Oh, wait a second. It does. It's not obvious. You got to click on it.
Yeah.
Clicking helps.
Okay.
You guys just
get out
need
your
to
joystick
stop.
and you move up and down the menu and hit the joystick.
You guys need to get rid of the Macintoshes and stop running Linux and just do everything on Windows, and everybody will be happy.
Windows? I just use my TS 2068.
Pure heresy there.
Oh my god!
Remember when it said install Windows 95 or better? Well, guess what?
Linux.
Installed.
It's breaking down into anarchy, David. It's time to end the meeting.
Thank you, Joe.
Get my torch out.
Andy, are you on the groups.io list? Have you signed up for that yet?
No, I don't know how.
Okay. All right. Andy,
send me that information and via email, and I'll go ahead and get forward on that.
I think I emailed you. Did you get my email? Is that how you?
I got the one about this meeting.
I'm sorry.
I got the one about this meeting back on the 29th.
Okay. I think I sent that. Okay. I'm gonna put my email to you in the chat just so you can send me an email real quick just to make sure I have your correct email address, Andy, and then I'll send you the instructions on how to get to the groups.io list. And Adam's got it. Adam, can you post it? You sent that directly to me.
Whoops. Well, maybe I only want you to know.
Right. It's a secret. It's groups.io/g/ts2068. And when you get there, you will get the secret handshake and password, which will give you access to all sorts of things.
Okay, so I'm 61, soon to be 62 in January. So all those characters and letters that you just recited to me, went this way.
Okay, well,
so I sent you an email.
Cool.
Do you not have access to the chat on your phone? Like, can you not see the chat window? Is that what it is?
You might not. Yeah,
I see.
And the other thing you can do, Andy, is go to timexsinclair.com and look under the About section, and there's all the links there somewhere.
Okay, I do see the chat. In the last chat that I see, 81 is Windows only.
Yeah.
So just read up. Scroll up.
Andy, I will email you the information.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I love seeing your backgrounds. I love seeing lots and lots of tech equipment in Evie's background and in Tim's background and in Joe's background. And I love hearing about people's programming experience. And this has been a fantastic meeting. It's been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all.